Disadvantages, you want to see that how many electrical contractors are actually using BIM. Then second, you can evaluate its cost-benefit analysis. Third, you can find out its impact on productivity. And fourth could be future opportunities and challenges for electrical contractors. So again, you can notice that 1A was divided into two or three tangible tasks. Now, what is the advantages of objectives? First of all, it narrows down the scope of your research. And you know that for each, like in construction, you have different work packages for a project. So basically, defining objective means you are defining the work package for your research. And each work package could have a different methodology, maybe different data needs, and so on. So you will work on each objective as a small, separate project. Any questions? Now, last thing is the scope of your research. Scope means what you plan to do and do not plan to do for your research. So it basically defines the constraints for your research. Because always when you try to do the research, the horizon could be very broad. But remember that in research you can't answer every single question. So you need to somehow limit yourself. So basically scope is the part where you define the limitations and the boundaries of your research. For example, the scope could be based on types of projects. You can say that your research will be only focused on commercial projects or residential buildings or healthcare projects and so on. You can also focus on different types of delivery systems. For example, only consider design-build projects or IPT-based projects and so on. You can also define scope based on the size of the firm, whether small firms or large construction firms. It could be target groups. For example, if you are collecting observations, it may be based on observations of project managers or site superintendents or construction workers. So instead of collecting the opinions from each group, you can focus yourself on one or two groups. Like I gave you the example earlier about the job motivation factors. Once you're doing that research, the motivation factors could be different for workers, for project managers, and for the executive management. So instead of basically collecting the data for each group, you can just pick one group and investigate it in depth. Always remember that whenever you are conducting the research, the depth of research is more important than its breadth. So if you pick one thing and go in deep and try to find out the answers, that is better than investigating so many things. Duration of your research, you can also specify that how long you will collect the data. Whether it will be collected within a period of 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, and so on. You can also sometimes define the scope based on finance. For example, how much budget you need to conduct your research. Sometimes it could also be based on resources. For example, you may do some hypothetical testing or actual implementation and so on. So if I go back to the sample proposal, you can notice that for this research, its scope was limited to institutional and commercial buildings, which means that we are not considering residential buildings for this research. Yes?
Sorry.
I was saying that for this research, its scope is limited to institutional and commercial buildings. Because although BIM could be implemented in a number of different projects and lead rating systems are available for all different types of projects. But instead of investigating everything, that person only investigated BIM used for institutional and commercial buildings.
So if my title already constrains it, do I just redefine that in the scope also?
Yeah. So typically, the scope you don't define in the title. So you can take it out from title and define it under scope.
But as my topic says residential building in the title, I mean it's okay.
That's okay. That's
so
fine.
I just redefine it.
Yeah. Then you don't need to redefine it.
Need
If it says in the title residential, then that's fine. Similarly, if you are doing a comparative study between different countries, that can come under scope. Now the next page in your proposal will be your preliminary literature review, which you have already conducted. Now let me give you some feedback on your literature review. One of the problems which I found in literature review, all the articles should be somehow connected with each other and they should be tied with the main objectives of your research. Now for some of you, while I was reading your literature review, I found that although it was written correctly, the articles were nice, but there was no connection between the different articles. They were talking about different things. So once you do your literature review, please make sure that your literature review is closely tied with the objectives of your research. So for example, if there are 3 or 4 objectives of your research, you should find at least 2 to 3 articles which are related with each objective. Here in the literature review, you can see that first of all, this person discussed about the problems with the current CAD-based systems. Then he provided the definition of building information modeling, how BIM could be used for sustainable design, some of the purposes, and then he provided results of a case study that how BIM could result in cost savings. Now once literature review is done, then the next part is to write a methodology, which I would say that after objectives, that is the most important part of your proposal. In methodology, you define that how the research will be conducted. What are the different steps that will be taken? And again, your methodology should be closely tied with your research objectives. So if you're writing your procedure or methodology, then somehow those steps should be connected with your objectives. Like you can see here that once I wrote the first step of this methodology, in the brackets it says objective 1, which means that once I execute it, the step number 1 of my methodology, it will help me to find the answers for objective 1. So that is called as some sort of mapping, where you try to map your research objectives with your methodology. And then the same exercise I would like you to do. Make sure that there is a mapping between your research objectives and your research procedure. Don't do any steps which will not provide you any data for your research objectives, because that could be a redundant step. Now sometimes it is possible that you may do some steps which are not initially linked with your research objectives, but they may provide you some indirect information. So as long as they are providing you some information, whether directly or indirectly, that is fine. So again, you can see different steps of the methodology, and they are tied with different research objectives. And last thing is references. Now once you write references, please make sure that you follow ANSI guidelines. If you did not follow the guidelines, then write it in your style. Then the last step is your work plan. That how you will conduct different steps of your methodology. So it would be simply a Gantt chart where you will prepare a schedule for your thesis. As I told you, that thesis is also a project. It has a start date, finish date, and some fixed deliverables. So you need to prepare your work plan in a way that you can achieve your research objectives within the given specified time. Now, any questions about the research proposal? Now, one thing which I would like you to do, as you can see in your course labels, that your next deliverable was due today, but I'm giving you the time after the spring break to complete it. So basically the Wednesday after the spring break, you need to submit